Hi, and welcome back to Semmelweis STEMtalk. On this episode, I'm honored to be joined by a scientist whose work connects the microscopic world of plants with some of the biggest challenges of our time. Dr. Katalin Solymosi is a plant biologist and habilitated associate professor at the Institute of Biology at Eötvös Loránd University. Her research explores the developmental, functional, and structural diversity of plastids, which are tiny structures inside plant cells that play key roles in photosynthesis, pigment production, and many other vital processes. She's particularly interested in how these structures relate to sustainable agriculture, climate change, and plastic-derived compounds, with applications in the food industry and medicine. Beyond her research, Dr. Solymosi is deeply involved in science policy, both nationally and internationally. She was a founding member and co-chair of the Hungarian Young Academy, and currently serves as the Outgoing Chair of the Young Academy of Europe. In these roles and beyond, she's been a strong voice for equity, diversity, and inclusion in research. She's also passionate about science outreach, and one of the ways she brings it to life is by organizing art and science exhibitions that reveal the hidden beauty of the microscopic world. And on top of all of this, our guest is a mother of two, balancing family life with her professional commitments and passions. So with that, let's jump into the conversation and hear more from Dr. Solymosi herself. Katalin, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio today. It's an enormous pleasure and honor for us. And I'd like to start from the beginning. Can you please tell us a little bit about your story, how you ended up in science, how you ended up in your particular field?
Yes, thanks. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I know it was hard to organize things because we had some disease issues, and then I also wasn't sure about being the good person to be interviewed, but I watched your videos from the beginning, and I was quite inspired by them, and then I saw their growing number, and then I decided that it's indeed something important. So coming back to the story I have, I think inspiration is highly important in that way. I was lucky enough, or I can say I'm quite privileged, because my father is a researcher, so I had a role model, I had someone at whom I could observe, and I saw that he's fascinated about what he's doing. He doesn't have a job but a vocation. So it's like doing his hobby and then getting recognition for that and rewarding. So I think that was something which inspired me, although he's not a biologist or in a completely different field. And my mother was also inspiring, but she had an 8-to-5 job, and she also made a career in international relations. But maybe somehow I was fascinated by the intellectual freedom, and also the freedom of that a researcher has, so that he can choose what he's doing what he loves the most, and this kind of things were highly inspiring in the family setting. And then of course knowledge was valued in the family, so learning, studying, personal development, intellectual development was something important for both of my parents. And then I was inspired by of course my primary and secondary school teachers a lot. And what I would like to outline in this kind of interview is that not only role models, teachers are inspiring, but there is a very strong power of reinforcement or recognition at early stages of your life. So I liked a lot of subjects, and I was good in many of them, but somehow, because I was genuinely interested in animals, and I started drawing birds early, at an early age. I did not have posters of pop stars in my room, but posters with animals.
Well,
so I learned
so
them.
nice.
Yeah, there was a journal, Hungarian publisher, which had kind of, I think it was a monthly journal with nice posters about animals, and I collected them, and I learned all of them. And then at the primary school, on the first class of biology, our teacher showed us animal pictures, and I recognized all of them. And then she gave me a 5. That was a kind of first positive thing. And then I went on competitions, and that was also something which somehow made me feel I'm good at biology, because in the 8th grade I got a 2nd place at the national competition. And then I got admitted to 2 secondary schools via competition, so without the entrance exam. I just passed the biology competition and they admitted me, and this way I chose my secondary school, where I also had inspirational teachers. So before going to university, I had also questions, because I'm interested in too many things, I would say. And I was thinking about maybe either going into maybe even working as a kind of helper with people with disabilities, even mentally handicapped people. But then I realized I did not tell it myself, or it wasn't so much a conscious decision, but I went as a volunteer in some organizations. And then I realized that maybe I'm not a good person to cope with the emotional burden or attachment and the kind of stress. Maybe I felt that this is a job. If you do it as a job from 8 to 5, maybe it can lead to kind of emotional burnout. Or I felt weak maybe I told myself, if I want to help, maybe in my free time I can do it, but I cannot imagine myself so much in such a position. And then I also wanted to become a lawyer. I have no idea why exactly, but finally I chose the biology. And at the university again, I was interested in many subjects. Biology is a huge field, animals, plant sciences, and so on. And I would like to outline that it's very often by chance that people find their ways, because, I had a kind of trial and error attitude, or I tried several places. I went there and decided, checked how I felt in the position, or I realized I don't want to do field work because I did not felt very safe. A woman sitting in a forest watching birds. Maybe that wasn't so much. So this way I just figured out the directions, but finally it was fully by chance that I got into the field where I am. And I also think that everything can be interesting if you dig deep enough in the field, and if you are open-minded and interested in.
And what would you say is the most fascinating part of what you do now?
What I like most is the kind of discovery feeling. The eureka moments when I'm doing a lot of electron microscopy, and that's the thing I would prefer not to give up, because then when you just look into the cells and zoom there, and sometimes you see special things that maybe nobody else has seen before, or that's something which is fascinating me even now. And also because it's nice and it's kind of concrete, because you see there's something and it's not like numbers. Or I also do a lot of biophysics and things like that, when you record spectra and you try to get kind of less concrete data that you need to interpret differently. When you have an image, of course, there also, but it's something I really like in my job.
And I know that beyond the lab, you also do a lot of work related to science policy, science diplomacy as well. For somebody who might not know what that means exactly, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, science policy is quite a large field, and there are very different aspects that one can discuss. So the one I do, I think, the most is advocacy. Science policy in this respect means that we are trying to improve the current research culture, to improve the situation of early or mid-career researchers, or overall things which we feel are not perfect in the current research culture or structures. Right. So this is one aspect of science policy. And there are many others, like science diplomacy, but what we do also quite a lot is science advice for policy, which means when researchers try to formulate and somehow give advice to policymakers, like on climate change or any other aspects based on scientific data and scientific evidence. They try to convince policymakers to take the right actions based on science.
And how did you get involved in something like that?
Yeah, I basically wasn't involved in that. And finally, when I had my 2 kids and I stayed at home for 6 years with them, and I came back from this long career break, and I realized the difficulties a mother can face with 2 small kids, teaching duties, and at the same time it was exactly the moment when I had to launch my own lab and try to secure my position as an independent principal investigator, and then all these challenges, I felt it's really hard for women to stay, and then I decided that I should do something to improve this and to advocate for improvements in supporting, mentoring women. And this is also why I think these kind of interviews are really important, because there are challenges, but of course they can be overcome. So there is a lot of positive things.
And if somebody is interested in getting involved in something like that, where do you think they can start?
They can start at HUC. I mean, if they are still at or DOS, I mean the doctoral student associations, and later on, or at least in Hungary, we have the Hungarian Young Academy. But I would advise them to start at their own local community, I mean faculty or in their smaller environment, try to find like-minded people and start to discuss with them things.
And you mentioned already that you got involved because you saw the challenges that you had to face. What do you think are the challenges in general for young researchers? So not just women, not just mothers, but young people who get involved in science.
I think that one thing they need to, which is challenging, is to find their own ways, and especially to develop themselves and maybe to get independence or decide whether they want to be a good team member in a supporting team, or whether they want to become independent leaders. And in that case, they need to secure all the funding, and this is right in the same time they need to have a family. Other challenges include, for example, the need for mobility, which is very positively regarded in research and science. So getting foreign experience and going to labs all over the world is important, but that's, again, a little bit a problem, because it's at the same time in the moment you want to have your family or start your family life.
Right. Yeah, it's not so easy.
These are challenges.
So it seems like there are quite a lot of challenges that you faced yourself and that you see in academia in general. And you mentioned that, yes, there are problems, but there are ways to fix those problems. Do you have any advice or suggestions for how certain problems that you see now can be fixed?
Well, one important thing, and that's the same for what I mentioned about science advice for policy, that it should be evidence-based. So one of the best things was when I started all my journey in science policy, that we did some surveys. And so it's then not a personal issue. It's not my own personal challenge that I'm trying to solve with advocating for my own challenge. But then you have respondents, thousands of respondents, and you have a clear vision of the problem that affects most people. And very often, if the surveys were written, we have asked open questions where they also provided advice, what should be solved or what is bothering them most. And so this way we could start to do kind of evidence-based advocacy, and the challenges were things to be solved and how they can be solved. We could advocate for recognition of career breaks, so that's very important. Also for medical doctors, recognition of their clinical practice, or recognition that they are not only doing research or maybe teaching, but also clinical work. So any kind of measures that try to help to give equal chances to all researchers to get recognition, and which are leading towards equity in recognizing your quality as a researcher, which should stand above the quantity of your scientific outputs or things like that. I think being well prepared for challenges or trying to overcome them there are lots of ways to do it. So for example, for a career break, you can prepare things that when you are at home with a small child, if your time allows and if you want to do so, it shouldn't be a must, and it does not fit everyone. But I did a lot of review writing and manuscript writing during those 6 years when I spent at home. Maybe I also needed this kind of intellectual time. I mean, I love to be with kids, but it's different. I mean, I try to some activities with science. And that helped me to keep a kind of publication activity and contact to science and literature. Right. And so there are plenty of things you can do to try to get over these difficulties and stay competitive even though you have a career break.
And is there anything that organizations can do from their end to support people in various situations?
Yes, what I can talk a lot is about women with small kids. So, I mean, for example, conferences, that's another challenge for them to visit, whether I want to leave at home the 2 kids and go right. abroad or take them with me. So if they offer possibilities, in some countries there is even financial support for women to travel with small kids to conferences, or if they offer kind of during any kind of events, even science policy related events or any kind of conferences, meetings, if they offer kind of babysitting or possibility to bring your child yes. and participate even if you are in this situation, that can help a lot. So there are plenty of ways and a lot of best practices from abroad, also about how to start women to relaunch their career after a break. So there are specific grants dedicated to yes. to this kind of events, and we are advocating for them. So, and also the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, where I am involved in the presidential committee for women for the advancement of or women career path.
Yes.
In academia, they are doing also a lot. So one of the most important things I think at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences is kind of bringing role models. So there are books now being released in English and in Hungarian.
Oh, I think I read about that one. I actually saw it on the website.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, where can you buy it? Is it only at the Academy itself, or do they also sell it in general bookshops?
I think it's available commercially, so it can be purchased.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's good because you can have role models, and it organizes all kind of events related to somehow giving more visibility to scientific excellence of women in science. And there are also measures or recommendations about having more women in committees or in panels, trying to avoid all male panels at conferences and this kind of things. But what is really useful that there are grants of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences which are dedicated to women, so that they write papers when they are with small kids, and they get kind of scholarship for that, and also to advance their career.
That's wonderful. And is it something, are these all kind of new, relatively new measures, or has this existed for a long time?
No, I think these are relatively new. So this committee started to work in 2016, as far as I know.
Right.
So in the last 10 years.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful to know that it does exist and there is some kind of, support.
If I may add, so the thing which I think was one of my most important I would not say achievements, but the thing I liked the most in my work in science policy was that we also achieved for several grants that the career breaks are now included. So for all kind of grants which have an age limit, now if you spent 6 years at home, then the age limit can be extended with that 6 years.
Right.
And that's a big step towards equity.
I mean, I think that's fair enough. Why wouldn't you do that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure I should say it, but yeah, this wasn't automatic, and in some cases it wasn't even easy to convince people that that's something that is basic. And in Western Europe, people would not understand why we spent so much time with advocating for this.
That thing you mentioned about conferences offering grants or even sometimes opportunities for the children to be there with you. When I think about it, I recently saw this thing somewhere in social media about this great professor who saw a mom at the back of his classroom in college.
I shared it on Facebook.
I think maybe, I think I might have seen it on your page. And, it's such a... people are congratulating him, that he's doing such a great thing. And he is doing a great thing. But in my mind, like, why are we not doing this more? Why did we move so far away from the concept of, community? Like, thousands of years ago, it was normal for children to be a part of, community's life. And everybody was involved in raising them, not just one mother. There was a group of women, men, and from an early age, they were part of living the life of the community. So I don't really get why, at this point, we think it's such a huge achievement when a mother is allowed to stay in the classroom because she had no babysitting options that day and she had to bring her kid. What is the huge problem with that? Like, I think our thinking on this is somehow twisted at this point, to be honest.
Yes, I agree. I mean, somehow there was a quite clear difference among how professional environments developed, and workplaces are also not so much into having a crying child, to say it in because it would disturb the workflow, the efficiency, and so on. But I'm not sure whether we can revert, but I think we should be more positive and more inclusive in this respect, and that could benefit everyone. But I also understand that from the point of view of a professional, I don't know, at a workplace, maybe it's not always the best. But so I don't have solution for this kind of issue. And on the other side, although I shared it, I'm not 100% sure that, for example, my kids would enjoy being on a conference. So I don't know, early September, I took my daughter because she was at home to a conference, and she listened to the section where I gave a lecture, but she was, she's 12 years old now, but she was quite bored. It was in English, but even then it's so I'm not 100% sure, and but I think we should be more natural about it and accept the decisions of parents, whether they want to, or the kids, whether they want to take them to conferences or not.
And beyond all of this work, beyond the advocacy and diplomacy, you are also involved in community outreach, and you try to bring science closer to society in general. When we say community outreach, what does that mean exactly for you, and why do you find it meaningful?
So, I'm also doing teaching. That's a kind of outreach to next generations, or when I'm teaching teachers, so who will teach biology at secondary or primary schools, that's also a way of outreach. But I think, and everybody says so, it's a commonplace that researchers should give back what they know to our society. They should not convince, but showcase that taxpayer money invested in their career or in their work is paid back. But that's one aspect, of course. So you should explain what you are doing so that people feel it's important in a way that not only fellow researchers understand your field, but the most important is to attract young people, inspire them, maybe not to have a career in science, because that's not for everyone, but at least to understand science, be inspired, have a positive experience. So when I'm doing these researcher nights, events, or the museums nights, or all kind of open days, having a microscope with small kind of unicellular organisms, algae and anything, and people just come, and kids are especially fascinated by that, and then I always think maybe that will trigger someone either to pursue a career, but or rather just to think positively about science or researchers, scientists. And I also, it's quite rewarding to be there, because you see then people even of our age or even older saying, oh, if I had a biology class like this when I was in primary school, so that they enjoy it, and they also somehow maybe understand what we are doing, and maybe can also better understand why it's interesting or why it's important. And that's very important to have a kind of science or research, science-friendly society that supports science or scientific evidence and has a kind of basic knowledge or tries or is better at try to distinguishing between fake science or fake news or real results. And yeah, I think that's something which is, I wouldn't say as important as doing research, but it's also something very important that researchers should do. But it's again something not everyone can do. I'm not saying I'm doing it very well, so I'm not giving big talks on my research topics, but I can give this kind of small insights and kind of interactive showcasing of what we are doing, which is based on personal experience, and it gives, I think, a lot back to people who then are inspired after the event.
But you know, when you say you don't do big talks, I don't think people want big talks. They want exactly what you're doing. They want it to be accessible. They don't want it to be so formal. They don't want it to be so unapproachable. You know, they want it to be something that is a part of their world, basically, a part of their everyday life.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are some people which are really good at giving nice, easily understandable lectures on their scientific results. But I think, interactive, immersive, inclusive projects where people can come and try out how that's also something important. And we had hundreds of people, so sometimes on Researchers' Night, who come and sit at the microscope, and that's something important.
And one of the other things that you do is you organize exhibitions, art exhibitions, based on your work. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, I don't do it very often or very frequently, but yeah, that's something. So as I told you that I'm interested in too many things, and that was always the case. Yes. So I was also doing some drawings of birds. That was maybe when I at a young age. So maybe that was also something which unconsciously or it linked arts and science, because I was representing birds, trying to make a kind of really nice representation. I wanted to represent them like they really look. And so I'm also doing some drawing and paintings, but I did not want to go into a profession where I'm so much prone to the audience, so to people and how they react to what I'm doing, because I'm doing what I can and what I like to do. And then, so I wasn't sure about the artistic career, but having this microscopic work and discovering fantastic, nice things in a microscope is something which is, again, something that is nice for me to see. And I also want to showcase it to others, because that's a kind of the secrets of nature or secrets microscopic. So Microcosmos was one of the exhibitions we made, and with my colleagues who also have fantastic photos, but never really thought about making exhibition. I think that's a fantastic way to reach out to people who would not even come to a researcher's night event, because they are not necessarily attracted, but who might go to an art gallery. And so it's a kind of different audience. You can reach out and showcase them the beauty of science, research, animals, plants, anything.
And is there some place people can see some of your works?
I mean, on my homepage, there are few photos, but I did not put all of them, because then it might be boring. And we also have a YouTube video from last year's exhibition we had in Wrocław at a conference of the Young Academy of Europe and Academia Europa with colleagues, fellow members. Yes. We had an exhibition, and I made a video out of it, and it's on a YouTube channel of the Young Academy of Europe.
You know, over your career, you have done so many things already. Thinking back on it, do you have anything you're particularly proud of so far?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, because normally it's not my task to judge my biggest achievement. But there are plenty of things which I like a lot, or which I can be proud of, or which are interesting for me. So I took part in several collaborations, and in one of them we were describing a new, completely novel organelle which is involved in producing tannins. Well, tannins people might know from wine, because it gives a kind of astringency, so a kind of peculiar taste to wine, especially those with barrique style. So these are produced by plants, and we took part in the discovery of how this is produced, and in all kind of discoveries related to for example, one of the topics I like the most. So instead of saying what I'm most proud of, but we were deciphering how plastids and cells in bats are developing, and we are now having a project with one of my PhD students, which is going to decipher the life of a leaf. That's the project title. So and there are fascinating things about it for me, because that is known by others, so it's not my discovery, of course, but in several of the bats, the next year's leaves are already present now, or in summer. They are developed earlier summer, and they spend more time in an embryonic stage inside the bud during winter, autumn, autumn and winter. So they need to survive quite harsh environmental conditions. But the embryonic leaves or the leaf primordia are there, and then they, of course, the most exciting part is when bud break, the leaves start to, the small tiny leaves appear and develop very quickly, and then they do photosynthesis, and then they have in autumn the senescence, and then they die. And we followed this cycle of a leaf, from the embryonic, from the very early point, and how plastids look like, and we combined it. What I also really like, we combined it with medicinal compounds, because we are working with horse chestnut, and the leaves also contain a lot of active ingredients of medicinal importance. And then we also followed up the profiles of the compounds the tiny leaves produce, and how this is changing during the life cycle of the leaf. And the other part I like is that this is kind of really basic research. This is like blue skies research, discovering something I don't know why people haven't studied before or haven't followed up before, but it's really descriptive science. But we are also trying to work with climate change related issues, so how plants can deal with drought, stress, or salt stress, and how they can recover, or how they can become more resilient with towards these stressors that are now very often huge challenges for agriculture. So that's something I also like a lot, because of course I wouldn't say we have solved the problems, but we contribute with small steps or small discoveries on how plants react to these stressors, and we are also doing a lot of studies about recovery after the stress, and also resilience, how we can improve their preparedness for this kind of stresses.
I mean, in the current, situation of the world, I think it's such an important topic, because at the end of the day, what if one day all the food crops just die out, and then what do we do?
Yes, I also think so, but it's surprisingly not so much, popular. Plant sciences or maybe agricultural sciences are much less popular, and I also feel a kind of difference maybe in funding. Everybody's convinced that finding cures for cancer and human diseases, I agree, it's fully important. But without plants, we wouldn't survive. But somehow it's a general trend all over the world that it's a little bit overlooked, in my opinion. But I agree with you, it's really interesting.
I mean, is it possible that because society, or the majority of Western society at least, is quite comfortable and quite far removed from, again, the natural cycles of nature, life, and how we used to live? So maybe they just don't really understand the importance and the urgency, because you go to the store, the food is there, you pay the money, you bring it home, there's food. What do you mean? Why is it so important? And then
yes, I agree that we are all of us, or many of us, are far away from agriculture and also urbanization, so that most people live in cities and really do not necessarily have access or much contact with nature. So that's one issue. There is even a phenomenon called plant blindness, which is it has a complex definition, but one of them is that people are not so much looking at plants. Of course, they like being in a forest, because we know it even has a positive effect on mental well-being to be surrounded by plants, but they overlook them. They concentrate on animals. This has evolutionary backgrounds, but many people won't even be able to name the plants, and many of them think of plants of being less important than animals, and that leads also probably to this whole phenomenon of plant sciences being maybe sometimes a little bit not overlooked or not considered.
Right. You know, you've mentioned so many important things today. Thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom. And before we wrap up, do you have any final words or pearls of wisdom for young people who would like to go into science, and perhaps specifically for young women who would like to do so?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because, as I mentioned, due to the challenges I see now, and I haven't touched upon this, but you know, my father was first of all a man, so situation completely different from the point of view of career break, and second, he did not work in experimental research. So, because I think also one of the challenges is when you need money to do expensive research, chemicals, a lab, a staff, instruments. So their research can be really more competitive because the resources are more limited. Yeah. Working in social sciences or humanities maybe is less demanding in this respect. So there are differences. So I did not see these challenges when I was inspired, for example, of the intellectual freedom. And I'm still convinced that's one of the things I like the most in my job, that I'm completely free of doing what I want, or not completely, because I need to get funding for the research. But anyway, I am the one who determines subjects I want to study. And of course, so I can make a choice. I'm free to choose when I work, but that can lead also to overdoing work if you like it, because it's a passion or vocation. But what I would advise is to find their own ways and follow their own path and make choices depending on what they feel, where their inner motivation comes. You cannot be a researcher if you don't have a kind of inherent inner motivation to do it, due to these challenges which are of course rewarded by many things, the Heureka moments, or when you discover something, but all those challenges can be only overcome if you are really genuinely interested in what you do and find the best place for you, where you fit in, you do what you really like to do, and of course where you are also good, and find also a good environment. That's also something important. Mentors or people who are inspiring you or helping you. And having communities like these young academies are also important in this respect.
What are these organizations and what do they do?
So these are relatively young organizations, not only in the name, but altogether. The first Young Academy was founded in 2000. It's the German one. These are organizations which are trying to advocate for researchers at an early or mid-career stage. And the Hungarian Young Academy was founded to help science outreach. It has not only a purpose of advocacy, but basically it's about trying to enhance collaboration, cooperation between researchers, but also to represent their interests at the national level. And the Young Academy of Europe was founded in 2012 by ERC starting grant winners. It's a little bit a different organization from a national Young Academy, because it is maybe not so young. The researchers in the Young Academy are all principal investigators, so group leaders who have showcased excellence and who are also interested in doing science policy at the European level and advocacy for this career stage, because we felt that it's not so much represented, and the interests of these researchers should be also somehow showcased and discussed in the European science policy framework.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to have you. It was an incredible honor to have you here today, sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us. And we wish you all the very best for the future.